If you saw hate happening in the community, what would you do? So today we had a chance to actually talk about it, have a chance to dialogue. The event was called From Community to Congress, a Stop AAPI Hate Roundtable Dialogue. First of all, this is not something I regularly get to do because oftentimes Asian Americans don't talk about the hate that they've experienced. Even though we saw the surge in anti-Asian racism, according to OC Human Relations, 1,800% increase since 2020. I don't hear a lot of stories typically about anti-Asian hate, and that's because oftentimes the community doesn't want to talk about it. But so glad that today we had some uncomfortable space to talk about it while our folks in Congress, we had 3 members from Congress actually there. So we had Congresswoman Grace Meng from New York, Congresswoman Judy Chu, along with Congressman Takano. So 3 Congress folks with us as we dialogued and had this conversation today. We talked to victims who had experienced Asian hate. Catt Phan and her experience at a concert that she went to. And Jenna Dupuy, also her experience at the skate park. Both very difficult events that they experienced and difficult events to talk about. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a link to some of these stories that were in the news in the description of the video. Yet they were so brave and courageous in the telling of their stories. So we began there with the telling of the stories of anti-Asian hate, which also is, in my mind, a kind of story of resilience, because though they were talking about moments of pain where they felt pain, pain can make us bitter or better. And I could tell that through the processing, even though they experienced pain, it had made them more resilient, more stronger. And they're able to tell these stories to be an example and resilient to others as well. By the way, if you're wondering what to say in a situation where you're seeing hate happen, first of all, your safety is important. But if you're in that space, ask, hey, is everything okay? One thing you can do is ask, hey, are you okay? And sometimes a person that's feeling kind of in the middle of everything doesn't feel so alone. So the voices of these women gave context to the pain that many have experienced all across our country, but many of these stories have not been heard. So thankful for a local, state, and national response to some of this hate. So rather than responding to pain that we experience out of fear and anger, how might we respond with love and wisdom? So after having a chance to listen to these stories, which provided a context to the work that's happening, we had a chance to respond. Hear a response from the state, local, and federal levels, including Congresswoman Grace Meng, who is helping to create a national Asian American museum. So the stories of Asian Americans, their histories, their heroes can be told. Dave Min, state senator. Tammy Kim, Irvine council member. All these folks had a chance to share a little bit about our response to the surge in anti-Asian racism, and I had a chance to share as well. So on my end, I had a chance to talk about what we could do in schools, and I talked a little bit about my experience that when students came to me and when I heard about students expressing fear of what was going to happen, having days of dialogue. We're similar to like the day that we had today. We had some space to kind of process some of the feelings. It helps sometimes to have these safe places where you can have civil discourse, where you can speak freely, but at the same time listen to others with empathy and respect. We talked about students being able to know their stories and tell their stories. I know when it comes to ethnic studies, there's some confusion around it sometimes, but I like to think of it as these 4 words: know, tell, listen, and do. And what does that mean? Know your story. Know your story. And oftentimes, many young people, they don't know their own story. And I know, and I don't blame anyone for not knowing their story, because when I was young, I didn't know my story as well. So giving young people the opportunity to know their story, to be able to tell it, and to tell it well with empathy and respect, while others listen with compassion. That's so powerful when you're able to use your voice. It builds a sense of agency as you tell that story. And when others listen, that's also powerful in creating that shared experience and mutual understanding and learning. And then finally together, the fourth word, do. Do something good with your story. So finding out what you're good at and then doing something good with it. That story can be then a story of resilience, one that helps to bring healing rather than further the pain. Then I also talked about civic engagement and learning, helping students to find out what it is that they're passionate about and then to do something good with it. Talked a little bit about California democracy schools and how schools can be places that help students to really foster and answer that question, who am I? Helping them to identify things that they're passionate about and then giving them some steps and guidance and support and encouragement to do something good with it. It begins with perhaps building that safe place, building that community, building that sense of belonging in their schools. They don't just go to a school, but rather they say, I belong to this school. Secondly, it includes elevating student voice, strengthening student voice so they feel comfortable to share their story. And then finally taking compassionate action, doing something good with your story. So whether it's at a local level or in your community, even in your own family or neighborhood, or perhaps it's something that's at the state level or federal level, empowering our students to do something good with their story. There's a Chinese proverb, if you have only 1 year, sow rice. And hey, thinking about just making a living, that's important. You know, you need to eat every day, right? But we got to think beyond that. As that Chinese proverb continues, if you have 10 years, plant trees. And I love that, especially these days as we think about sustainability and having green energy and green ribbon schools even. Definitely need more trees. But the Chinese proverb continues, if you have 100 years, then educate the next generation. Well, we have that opportunity right now. And how does that education of the next generation happen? Well, oftentimes it does happen in our schools. And oftentimes we do want to create those spaces where we could dialogue about these kinds of things. Days of dialogue. I love that. From community to Congress, a reminder of the representative democracy that we live in, that our voices matter, that there are individuals that will take our voices and then with that, take action, compassionate action to serve the needs of the community. What a blessing.